Good morning, Year 11. Welcome to Term 2, Week 2 of Home Learning. So what you should have done already is finished off Week 1 that looks at Workshop 1 and 2 of the cultural and historical context of Christianity. And we know that Christianity grew out of Jerusalem and grew out of the Jewish context. So the idea for today is to move on to the next dot point of our syllabus and start looking at Jesus himself. How did Jesus exist within that framework of the Middle East? So the first thing we're going to do is look at the principal events of Jesus' life. So you have your green workflow doc, then you have the screencastify, which is what you're watching now, hopefully. Then this doc over here is our first part. If we open it up, we have a get stuck in right at the very top, which looks at common sayings that we use in our everyday life. The reason this is here is often we get students say, oh, what does Christianity mean to us today? Whether you are a Christian or not, you are living in a heavily influenced Christian society. So if someone tells you that another one bites the dust, it's a pretty famous song, it actually is from a biblical phrase and it means to die. So there are 37 sayings there that I guarantee you use in your everyday life. So have a look at them. Then when we scroll down, we're going to start looking at Jesus. One of the principal beliefs that we get to later on is that Jesus is truly a man and truly God at the same time. So if you watch these websites and videos, they'll give you examples of Jesus being a human being. So the fact that Jesus suffered, the fact that Jesus ate, etc. Put in some facts there about him as a person, and then what quotes can you support it? If you can get biblical quotes, that would be perfect. Then this column here is the acts of Jesus as a God. So the fact that he was able to cure sin, the fact that he could control storms, etc. And then biblical quotes that can support that over there. So that comes from all of those resources there. Then when we come down to here, you're going to look at the events of Jesus' life. Now, there are lots of major events in his life. You have to choose 5 key events that you see in his life. Now, obviously, things like the Last Supper, his death, resurrection, etc., are all pretty major events, but they're all part of the Passion Week. So if you maybe even had Passion Week as one point there, what other key events? His birth, his parables, etc. And you can get that information from this card here. So please don't just go off the top of your head. Go through these 4 sites. All right, that's the first task. So essentially that could take you about half a lesson, if not more. Then we have a profile of Jesus. So we're getting to know who Jesus is, the person, a bit more so to that. So if you click on here, it's like a character profile that you do in English. You're looking at things like his date of birth, who's his mother, who's his father, where was he born. This one, see if you can do this off the top of your head. The fact that you're in your 13th year of education, Catholic education, some of you should know this pretty well. Then things like what were some of the things he liked. If I can scroll down, it's not letting me. Then what were his attitudes? It's things like who did he hang out with? What problems did that cause? So we know that he hung out with the outcasts, the poor, etc. What were some of the names people called him? We know he's called the Messiah. Then above it, it's what did these people think of him? So that should be straight out of last week's work, I should say. What were his likes and dislikes? Please, once again, use these resources. So even though I said at the beginning, go off the top of your head, go back and look at these resources to support you. Then we move on to the images of Jesus. So the last question here is, who is Jesus to you? Obviously, the Jesus in the Middle East 2,000 years ago was the human Jesus. To us today, he's a very different person. He's that God and human at the same time. So now we're starting to look at Jesus as a role model. Who is he for people today? So when we click on this, it's essentially for you to find 5 images of Jesus that reflect different aspects of his character. Now, there is a link here that takes you to Google images of Jesus. And if you want, you can choose 5 from there, but it'd be great if you even went further than that. This is just a starting point, remember. We've got our flame of learning. What type of images do they tell us? So this one here, we've got an image of strength with his gaze. Here we've got an image of compassion with the softness of the images, etc. But notice straight away there, he's essentially looking like a European white Jesus. Now, lots of people argue against that, but when you think about that concept of a divine Jesus, Jesus is a reflection of the image of us. So we're in a very Anglo-Saxon world in Australia, so this is often the Jesus we see. If you are, say, for example, living in Asia, you often get an